Alright, so tonight's lesson is lesson 101, and we are rounding mixed numbers. So I kind of drew a number line, and we're dealing with the number 7 3/4. So what we want to do is we're going to round this number. Now we are either rounding it down to 7 or up to 8. So I drew a number line that showed you kind of the 7, the 7.5 mark, and then our 8 mark. And we have to decide which number we're going to round it to, or which number it's closest to. So the way that you do this is you always look at the denominator of the fraction part. And if I look at it, it's a 4, okay? So then I would need to split my 4 into half, which is 2, okay? And a fraction with a denominator of 4 that is equal to 1/2 has a numerator of 2. So 2 over 4, we know that's equal to 1/2. Now, is 3/4 bigger or smaller than 2/4? So we look at that numerator. Is 3 bigger than 2? And we say yes. So this is my 1/2 mark, and it would be 7 2/4. But since I have 7 3/4, I'm going to round that number all the way up to 8. I'd round it up to 8. Now, if my number was 7 1/4, halfway is 2/4. So if I had 1/4, I'd round it back down to 7. Here's our first example. Go ahead, copy it down, and try it yourself. Jason had 6 2/5 yards of rope. Estimate the length of rope he had by rounding 6 2/5 to the nearest whole number. Alright, now I didn't draw a number line for this, but again, try and think of like the halfway mark. Look at your denominator. See that it's a 5. Find your halfway, and then keep going. Alright, so what I did here is I have your answer pretty much, but what I did is I put my denominator and then I broke it in half, which is 2.5 or 2.5. Now you never really ever put a fraction over a fraction on top of as your numerator, but I'm just doing this so I could show you kind of how it works. So half of 5 is 2.5 or 2.5. Now I'm going to look at my numerator of 6 2/5, and I have a 2. Is a 2 smaller or bigger than a 2.5? And we would say that it is smaller. So I'm going to round back down to 6 instead of a 7. So I have 6 yards. Now, if I had 6 3/5, 3 is going to be bigger than 2.5, so I would round it up. But since I have 2, smaller than 2.5, I round it down, back down to 6. Alright, here is the next one. So, Kylie estimated the area of this rectangle as 45 square inches. Did Kylie make a reasonable estimate? So here I have 8 7/8 of an inch and 5 1/4, 5 1/4. So don't forget what length, what area is. Area is length times width. So I have written that on my paper. Length times width. Okay, so what you need to do is round 8 7/8 up to the nearest, or down to the nearest number, whole number, and 5 1/4 to the nearest whole number. Then we're going to have to multiply them. Well, if you look at 8 7/8, the bottom number, your denominator, is an 8. If I cut an 8 in half, I have a 4. Is a 7 higher or lower than a 4? And we would all say higher, so we'd round that 8 up to a whole number of 9. If I look at my 5 1/4, and I split 4 in half, I would have 2. Is 1 bigger or smaller than 2? And since it's smaller, I'm rounding it back down to 5. So now I have 9 times 5. And when I do 9 times 5, I get 45. Don't forget, it is square inches because we are multiplying. When we always deal with area, we are dealing in square units. Alright, the next one. Estimate the perimeter of a rectangle picture frame that is 15 1/6 long and 10 3/4 wide. Alright, so go ahead, try this one yourself. Keep in mind that we're using the word estimate and we're using the word perimeter. Okay, so I've already done this for you. I wrote down kind of your equation here for perimeter. It's 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. Or it could also be, let's see, it could also be length plus width plus width. Doing this way by multiplying 2 times your length and then adding 2 times your width, you get your answer faster, but they will both work. Okay, so if I have 15 and 1/6, I'm going to cut my denominator in half, make it a 3. Is 1 bigger or smaller? It's smaller, so I round down to 15 as my whole number. I look at 10 and 3/4. I cut 4 in half, which is a 2. Is 3 bigger or smaller? And it's bigger than 2, so I round that up to 11. So I have 15 and 11. So now I plug in my numbers. 2 times 15 for my length plus 2 times 11. So I do 2 times 15 and I get 30. 2 times 11, I get 22. When I add them both together, I get 52 inches. Now it's not square inches. I did not multiply them. I just added them. So it's just plain inches, not square inches. Alright, and here is your lesson practice. Round each mixed number to the nearest whole number. So you're either, make sure you cut your denominator in half, then look at your numerator. If it's bigger, you're going to round up. If it's smaller, you're going to round down.